The anime industry has done it again, shaking up the entire Hollywood industry. Chainsaw Man Reze's Arc had a meager budget of $4.1 million, well below current productions, and has already surpassed $100 million in revenue. But Chainsaw Man didn't just beat Hollywood at the box office. No, this movie deserves an Oscar, although I don't think Hollywood will give it that chance. That would be admitting that cartoons are beating them at their own game. Today, we're going to analyze the movie Chainsaw Man Reze's Arc, and we'll understand why it deserves an Oscar. Guys, I'm a movie person. I love anime, but my greatest passion is film productions. If you follow the channel, you'll know that. And you'll also know that I understand something about cinema. So when I say that Reze's Arc deserves an Oscar, it's not by chance or to get clicks. I'm talking about a production that brings together several elements that cinema loves, is obsessed with detail, and executes them brilliantly. Okay, the movie had me hooked within 3 minutes of starting. The movie starts with a magnificent intro. And if you follow my channel, you know I love doing that kind of montage to the rhythm of the music. That alone was enough to hook me. And on top of that, it has a reference to Tarantino's fetish. What more could I ask for? But it's not just a generic intro. The most brilliant thing is that the intro sets the context for what's to come in the film. Basically, the intro is also part of the story. Sure, it still mixes artistic elements typical of intros, but it's not an intro that should be skipped, so to speak. It also gives you a hint of what's going to happen when Denji picks up the ring in his hand. I thought it was what he had in his chest, but after watching the movie, it's clear that it's Reze's ring. So much so that there's an explosion behind it. For me, the intro is 10 out of 10. Okay, but I'll stop being an editing geek, at least for now, and move on to the narrative, because it's brilliant, right? For that, I have to explain a little bit about the theme of the anime in general.
No way I'm dying till I've held some boobs.
At least considering that I haven't read the manga. I've only seen the anime and the movie. There are creators who have already read the manga. That's cheating. Just kidding. Let's get to what matters. Chainsaw Man has a whole theme about romance, loneliness, and aggression towards men. Yes, Chainsaw Man is about how men's problems are often ignored or ridiculed.
Everybody's after my chainsaw heart! What about my heart? Denji's heart! Does nobody want that? Ah!
But I could make a whole video explaining this part. So if you want it, leave Chainsaw Man masculinity in the comments. But first, just to clarify, the theme of a work refers more to what it's really about, the message it wants to convey, more or less. It's clear that Chainsaw Man is about a horny guy who would do anything to touch a boob. It's about hunters and demons, etc. That's the superficial part of the story. The theme is what's behind that generic story. It's the heart of the story, and it's what will turn a generic story like this one, hunters killing demons, something that's been done to death in the industry, into a work of art. Denji is a person who has never had anything in life. He is alone, without hope. What makes him change is his love for Pochita and his desire to show her his dreams. And when Makima gives him a purpose, things start to improve, or so it seems. Chainsaw Man is a love story, but a perverse one. As we have seen before, Denji is a kid who has had nothing. His only desire is to touch some boobs, and although this may seem like the typical perversion of the Japanese, it hides something deeper. Denji reflects a part of men who believe that sleeping with a woman is the coolest thing in the world, that it will solve all your problems. And there is a whole culture today, and perhaps always has been, around sex being the greatest symbol of masculinity. But as we see throughout the work, and even in the movie, Denji realizes this. The thing is, all the women who approach him have some kind of ulterior motive. Even Himeno, who I think partly just wanted to make Aki jealous. The fact is that this love story is perverse because it tells us how a person is looking for something real and profound, when all he gets is manipulation. And yes, even though it may not seem like it, Denji doesn't just want to lose his virginity. He wants to have someone special.
Oh, I knew it! That makes so much sense, man! Look, he's a virgin!
Because otherwise, why would he reject Himeno? As for Makima, who seems to be Denji's ultimate love interest, so far, my feeling is that Denji will end up with Makima. Makima is a hyper-manipulative person, and honestly,
screw her.
I'd much rather he end up with Reze. But I won't get sidetracked with this. And since we're talking about Reze, let's get into what the movie is about. Reze is a character who appears out of nowhere in Denji's life, something that we all found suspicious but not Denji. For the first time, someone seemed to show real interest in who he was, unlike Makima, who only uses him. Well, later we find out that Reze had also been using him. Poor Denji. The fact is that even though it's obvious to us that something was wrong, Denji is a person who has never had anything, so he is grateful for the little he gets, even though he could demand something better. This is such a recurring theme in the film that Reze even questions his way of life.
Like I said before, your situation's pretty strange. You're a teenager, but they don't let you go to school. Instead, you have to hunt down devils. The government shouldn't allow
But the
that.
thing is, since he has never had anything, he is only capable of seeing the positive side of things.
Things are finally starting to get fun.
That's why he's so easy to manipulate. And that's what the women who approach Denji do. They manipulate him using his greatest weakness, his virginity.
So if you prove me right and execute the gun devil, you may tell me any wish you have, and I'll ensure that it comes true.
Anything though? Like even
Yes,
sex?
Denji. Any wish.
And just to make it more tragic, when it seems that Denji will have the opportunity to try it with someone, with Reze, who had turned to be with Denji, the jealous manipulator Makima arrives and kills Reze. Makima was probably aware of everything that happened, all the destruction and chaos, but she decided to sit back and watch without doing anything. But when Reze returns to Denji, the bit won't allow it, because she doesn't want to lose her lapdog. And besides that, from Denji's perspective, Reze stood him up. He doesn't know that in the end she wanted to be with him, and he'll never know the truth. A tragic love story. The entire plot of the film is consistent with what the work established from the beginning. And I understand that it's difficult to deviate when you're adapting an arc from the manga, but that doesn't detract from the merit of it being a well-told story. Apart from the theme being well established and consistent, throughout the film we have several symbolic elements that reinforce the story. And my friend, if there's one thing Hollywood loves, it's symbolism. For example, the symbolism of the airplanes or the spider catching the butterfly. Just when Reze and Denji are in the pool. Keep in mind that this scene was not in the manga. But why did they put it in the movie? Because this is cinema, brother.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
And the work has to be adapted to the cinema. That's why it's called an adaptation. It's not enough to just copy the manga, right? Kimetsu no Yaiba. Apart from the symbolism, the film has impeccable photography. We're talking about Fujimoto, a man who is a film fanatic. In the opening of the anime, there are several references to classic film scenes. In the Reze Arc itself, there is a reference to a scene from the movie No Country for Old Men, when the killer is hanging the cop. And already in the anime, I was blown away by the cinematography. I remember when Himeno is seducing Denji, there is a shot in a mirror, and I said, "Look at that bastard." Of course, it's simulated. It's not the same to film in a mirror, which is already complicated because the camera can't be reflected, as it is to draw a picture like that. But that's the cinematic touch that the animation I'm talking about has. It's an anime that tries to replicate cinema, and it does so brilliantly. And in the movie, they only reinforce this even more. The photography of Reze's Arc is brutal. And what can we say about the editing of this film? Come on, it's responsible for all the emotions you've experienced during the film. If you've been moved, it's because of the editing. Even in the anime, the editing is pure gold. I remember when Himeno tells Aki that she has to get Makima drunk. Then she puts out her cigarette and boom, transition to the bar. What a transition. That's how you do transitions, guys.
But as far as the film is concerned, the pace never let up. And this is thanks to the editing. For example, I think the pacing problem in The Infinite Castle could have been easily solved with editing. The editor has to understand the audience's emotions in each scene very well, and The Infinite Castle forgot about the pace, boring us with flashbacks, which could have been fixed in the editing by interspersing a few more fight scenes and flashbacks, and not leaving about 20 minutes of flashbacks in a row in the middle of the most important fight in the film. The fact is that in Reze's Arc, the pacing is very well done so that you don't get bored in the middle of the film. Editing not only limits you to showing what is happening, but also to conveying something, such as the scene with the spider and the butterfly interacting with Denji and Reze in the pool, the apple crushing, just as Reze bites Denji's tongue. Each scene is carefully placed for a reason. And as for the sound editing and music, I just have to say that when I was at the cinema, the people in front of me started dancing during the intro and when the fight with Reze began. I think the music achieved its goal. Although this film is trying to replicate the strategy that made the Kimetsu no Yaiba films a success, I think it managed to surpass it when it comes to cinema. It adapted the arc better and gave us an Oscar-worthy film. But anyway, if you want to understand how Chainsaw Man is replicating the strategy of Kimetsu no Yaiba, and why the Infinity Castle and all the previous Kimetsu no Yaiba films were a success, here I explain that strategy, which was risky but changed everything in the industry.